Chale, Namaskar everybody, good afternoon all. I welcome you all on the behalf of StudyIQ. My name is Pritesh Maturkar. I'm the Senior Faculty of Geography, Environment and Ecology in StudyIQ. And ladies and gentlemen, side by side my hand, I'm also your tour guide because the person whom you are seeing right now on the screen, I have been to 49 countries and I've traveled across 4 continents of the world per se. So for me, geography is not only my profession but also my passion. So, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to Geography Through Maps version 2.0. So, today is lecture number 8, I guess. So, like as the time progresses, the lecture count will keep on increasing. I genuinely pray and I sincerely hope that all of you are following this series diligently because in this series I am targeting three very important pillars. Number first pillar being that I'm giving you the conceptual clarity behind every location. Number two, we'll be understanding it through the prism of current affairs too. And number third, in this series, whatever maps, whatever diagrams, or whatever different animations I'll be using, all of this will be readily available on my Telegram group, CSC with PM, just as it is after the lecture. You don't have to worry about it. So today we'll be focusing on basically the lost continent of something referred to as Zealandia, the only floating part of which today is basically a very small country called as New Zealand out there. So New Zealand, like the heaven on earth. Once you visit this country, then you will literally feel that you have achieved everything in life and now we can ascend to the other realm out there. Very, very beautiful country. So let us begin up with the discussion of New Zealand. Those of you who are live right now, please make sure you do follow me on my Telegram handle CSA with PM, and those of you who will watch this in a recorded format, do follow diligently whatever I'm uploading on this group because that will help you all. So good afternoon everybody, Kanwar ma'am, Anshuman sir, Ayush ji, rest of you, those who are live with me right now, feel free to comment because this is a live lecture. So I keep on interacting with each and every one of you, and I am here only for you all. Okay. So let us begin up with the discussion of New Zealand now. So New Zealand arguably will be our last part of the discussion of the Oceania series. Oceania in the sense that it does include the Southwest Pacific island groupings, but that we will combine up with the West Indies and the East Indies in the very end. So we have completed Australia. Now I'm starting off with a very beautiful country called as New Zealand. So if you talk about New Zealand, you will see that this country in total has 3 islands. The northern one, it is called as the North Island. Then the southern one, it is called as the South Island. And then over here, we have an island called as Stewart Island. So the main continental landmass of New Zealand has 3 islands over here. And to the east of it over here, you do have a small island, which is again ruled by New Zealand, called as Chatman Islands. But in the continental crust, or dare I say, in the main continental extension margins, we consider these 3 islands. So up till now, guys, we used to think that New Zealand is a separate island country. Okay. Tania, ma'am, good afternoon. Please, those of you who are watching me live right now, please give me a heads up. Is my voice clear? Is my audio clear to everybody? Right? So up till now, we used to discuss, or we used to basically just understand that New Zealand is a sort of an island country in the Pacific, but now it has been proven that New Zealand is a part of a larger big continent. So now instead of 7 continents in the world, we have 8 continents, and the name of the 8 continent, it is referred to as what? It is referred to as Zealandia. So this entire continent has now submerged in the Pacific. It is separated from Australia by a small depression called as Cato Trough. So this Cato Trough is where actually you have the beginning of the Great Barrier Reef. So if I'm just trying to showcase you the actual map of Zealandia, the actual map of Zealandia looks like this. So this is really a very, very big continent out there. The entire continental landmass has now submerged underneath the Pacific. 94% of it is underwater. The area is close to 5 million square kilometers. Only New Zealand's 3 islands, including the Chatman Islands. Then you are having an island group called as New Caledonia, ruled by France out there, French overseas territory, which is now the remaining part of this continent. Rest all of it has submerged in the water. So now it is referred to as the Earth's eighth continent. This is very important. And this is separated from Australia by a depression called as Cato Trough. So if I'm talking about New Zealand, guys, New Zealand in a nutshell is what? New Zealand in a nutshell is basically the southern extension of something referred to as the Pacific Ring of Fire. We all know that in the Pacific Ocean, we are having active submergent margins. We are having active submergent zones. So you are having subduction boundaries in the sense you are having subduction of one oceanic plate underneath the other oceanic plate or continental plate. So here on the far eastern side, on the west coast of South America, we have OC type of boundary where Nazca plate is subducting underneath the South American plate. Above we have OO type of boundary, the Pacific plate subducting underneath the Eurasian and the North American plate. Over here again we have OO type of boundary where the Pacific plate is subducting underneath the Philippines plate. So New Zealand marks basically the southernmost extension of something referred to as the Pacific Ring of Fire, PROF. This is also referred to as the circum-Pacific belt of earthquakes and volcanism. You have very deadly uh, earthquakes and volcanic eruptions coming over here. So right now, as I'm taking this lecture, one volcanic eruption has happened in Ethiopia, right? So we'll be doing it when we're doing Africa. So for now, please remember that you have subduction margins on the east side of the northern island, and then after this the subduction margins they enter into the southwest Pacific. If I'm talking about the islands of New Zealand over here, so to the east of North Island, you have one subduction zone. This is where you are having the Pacific plate subducting, and then another subduction zone happening is basically to the southwest of Southern Island. And in between the North Island and South Island, you are having basically the interaction boundary of the Austro-Indian plate with the Pacific plate. So for all of you now, I'm opening up basically the map of the basically those regions, those parts of the lithosphere where we are having active convergence and we are having active transform boundaries too. So if you carefully observe what is happening in New Zealand out there, so this is basically our North Island. So to the east of North Island is where you have one very active trench system called as the Kermadec trench. Above you have Tonga trench, so Tonga and Kermadec. So basically what is happening is here we are having the subduction of the Pacific plate underneath the Indo-Australian plate. So better to refer to this as a part of now the Australian plate, but before this was a separate continent called as Zealandia. So the movement is almost 47 millimeters a year. That is the rate of the plate movement, the rate of subduction out there. Then this boundary, it continues where it continues in the southern island. Over here, we don't have any active subduction, but this is where we are having a transform fault. Transform fault meaning the Australian plate and the Pacific plate, they are just slipping past each other. And after that, if you go into the southern side of New Zealand towards the southwest, then you again have basically a active subduction beginning. So this is referred to as Markari fault. So Markari, Macquarie, Markari fault, and above you are having Kermadec and Tonga trench. And this over here, when this boundary enters into the southern island, this is referred to as Marlborough fault system. So in a nutshell, if you compare the North Island and the South Island, which of the two islands are more tectonically unstable and which of the island is having more volcanic features? But naturally, we are having North Island because hardly 20 to 30 kilometers down east into the Pacific, you have the subduction zone of the Kermadec Trench system, which is extending from above from the Tonga Trench. Now, If we really want to understand New Zealand, so we have to focus separately on the northern island and separately on the southern island, because then only we'll be able to understand this country very properly. But first of all, let us focus on the important water bodies, because understanding water bodies is very important over here. Then we will move towards the understanding of the physiographic features out there. So the water body which separates Australia from New Zealand, this is referred to as Tasman Sea. When I'm talking about Tasman Sea, so this is named after Sir Abel Tasman. So Tasman Sea, basically the water body which was discovered by a Dutch explorer for the very first time out there in the 1640s, 1642 to be very precise. So this sea is named after that person only, called as the Tasman Sea. The first person to actually give a detailed map of New Zealand, detailed map of New Zealand in the sense, the first explorer, again Dutch, who gave the detailed map of New Zealand, the name of the person, it is referred to as James Cook. So James Cook is credited with giving the first detailed map, the first detailed impression of this basically island country. But who are the aborigines of New Zealand? Aborigines meaning the First Nations, the people who basically were the first settlers over here. So the First Nations of New Zealand, they come from French Polynesia near Samoa. So the First Nations, they are referred to as Maoris. These are basically the Maoris. So Maoris settled in New Zealand starting from around, let's say, 1000 1100 CE, and they settled up till 1300 to 1400 CE. And then, when the colonizers will come, they will then start persecuting the local aborigines, the local First Nations. Today, Maoris are outnumbered over there. You must have heard about the Haka war cry, the famous girl speech which happened in the New Zealand parliament. She tore up the bill because their rights were not protected over there. So if we talk about New Zealand, in New Zealand, the water bodies are really very important because questions are often asked from this. So the first water body here, we are having Tasman Sea. Now I'm opening up the physical map of New Zealand and I'm quickly discussing the water bodies that we have over here so that all of you benefit from this. So if I talk about the sea which separates Australia from New Zealand, this is referred to as the Tasman Sea, named after Sir Abel Tasman. Then above, if you go, IUSG, it's called as the Haka war cry. War cry. So war cry in the sense that every clan will have their own special lineage, will have their own special linguistic, basically articulation of their clan's culture and tradition. So that is why the Maoris, they are very much famous for their ruthlessness when it comes to defending their clan. You can just Google it. It's a very like very fiery speech out there, and she was also fired from the parliament. Yeah. So now, if you go into the northernmost tip of New Zealand, so northernmost tip of New Zealand, it is called as Cape Reinga. This is where you have the 90-mile beach. We did discuss the 80-mile beach in Australia. 90-mile beach is in basically New Zealand out there. Then, if you come down little bit towards the southern side over here, so here you will be finding a very important gulf. So this gulf is called as Hauraki Gulf. And then over here you have a very important bay. This bay is called as the Bay of Plenty. So Bay of Plenty and Hauraki Gulf, these two are very important entries. Why? Because these are the regions from where New Zealand was colonized. So Captain James Cook, he first entered into New Zealand from basically the Bay of Plenty. Above you are having Bay of Islands. So close to 700 small islands you are having over here. Some of them are volcanic, some of them are continental. This is where we have basically the Bay of Islands. Let me just showcase you that entry too. Yes. So we are having Bay of Islands. So Bay of Islands, Brim Bay, Hauraki Gulf and Bay of Plenty. So in total you are having 700 small islands. Some of them are volcanic, some of them are continental, through which basically the colonizers, they entered into the New Zealand. Now Over here, you must be seeing two very important entries, Gulf and Bay. So what is Gulf? Gulf is a water body which is surrounded by land on three sides, but the opening is very narrow. And Bay is again a water body which is surrounded by land on three sides, but the opening is quite wide. So Gulf will have narrow opening, Bay will have a very big opening. So Hauraki Gulf, then you are having Bay of Plenty. If I'm naming the water bodies over here, so Tasman Sea, then this over here, this is called as Cape Reinga. So Cape, basically a narrow protruding of land into the sea out there. So this is land. Over here we have water, water and water. So it is exact opposite of basically the Gulf out there. So it's a very narrow protruding of land extending into the ocean surrounded by water on three sides. A bigger part of Cape will be called as peninsula, right? Then two very important gulfs. So here we have Hauraki Gulf out here, and then over here we have something referred to as Bay of Plenty. So Bay of Plenty is very important. Why? Because this is where you have some of the most active volcanoes of New Zealand. New Zealand sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire out there, especially the Northern Island. So Bay of Plenty has numerous active volcanoes. We'll be discussing. One of them erupted in the year 2019, the Vaitamo White Island volcano. It killed around 30 to 40 people out there. So this is Bay of Plenty. After this, if we move little bit towards the southeastern side of New Zealand, so this is where you will be finding a very important bay again. This is referred to as Hawke Bay, because here we have a city called as Napier. Napier is a very important port city of New Zealand. So Hawke Bay. After that, basically the strait separating the North Island of New Zealand from the Southern Island. So the name of the strait that separates the North Island from the Southern Island itself is referred to as the Cook Strait, named after the Captain James Cook. So he entered New Zealand in the late 1750s, and then he is credited with the proper in detail mapping of New Zealand. So this is referred to as Cook Strait. Cook Strait is where you actually have the capital of New Zealand called as Wellington. So this is referred to as Cook Strait. So New Zealand map is very important because you get to know small very important entries. So what is strait? Strait is a narrow water body which separates two big water bodies. So if you talk about Cook Strait, it is separating the Tasman Sea from the Pacific Ocean out there, a very small narrow water body. After that, if you go in the southern side, so in the southern side, you will be having one very important entry. So a bigger part of land which is surrounded by water on three sides, it is referred to as peninsula. So this is where we are having Banks Peninsula. So this peninsula is very important because this is where we have one of the most important cities of New Zealand called as Christchurch. So this is a very important agri-export hub of New Zealand. So make sure that you also remember this entry over here. So this peninsula, it is referred to as the Banks Peninsula. We refer to it as what? We refer to it as the Banks Peninsula. Very important entry. After that, if you go in New Zealand, so New Zealand, you will be finding two very peculiar entries. So we did discover the Gulf, we discovered the Bay. Now there is something referred to as Bight, what we discussed in Australia as the Great Australian Bight. So Bight is a very smooth curvature along the coast. The coast is not inundated, the coastline is rather almost flat. So the beaches in New Zealand are very beautiful. New Zealand does not have natural deep water ports on the east side. The natural deep water ports are existing where you have the subduction margins on the northern island, and then you have on the west side, but here on the east side you don't have natural deep water ports, they are very less. So Canterbury Bight, named after the Canterbury Plains out there, so very smooth curvature along the coastline. After that, if we move down south, so this is where we are having another very important strait of New Zealand called as Foveoch Strait, separating the southern island from basically the Stewart Island. So another very important water body of New Zealand over here. This is where we have Poviok Strait. So Poviok Strait will separate the southern island of New Zealand from basically the Stewart Island out there. And after that, over here, a very smooth curvature along the west coast where the alpine fault runs. This is called as the Westland Bight. We call it as what? We call it as the Westland Bight, a very smooth curvature along the coast. So if I'm just showcasing you the Westland Bight, so see, a very smooth curvature along the western coast of the southern island of New Zealand. This is referred to as Westland Bight. Then above we are having Karamia Bight, and this is where we have basically the bay named after Sir Abel Tasman, the Tasman Bay over here. And then again, this is called as Cape Farewell, a narrow protruding of land into the sea. This is basically a sandbar. So if you just Google the images of Cape Farewell, let me just showcase you. It's basically a sand pit. It's basically a sandbar out there. So Cape Farewell, little bit of plate tectonics, and the floor has itself risen up over there. Just showcase you Cape Farewell, New Zealand. So it is just like this. It's a sandbar, it's a sand pit which has come above. From the satellite images, it somewhat looks like this. So it is called as the Farewell Spit out there. So you are having accumulation of the sandbar, you are having accumulation of little bit of basically corals also over here. So this is called as Cape Farewell. This is where this is on the northernmost tip of the southern island, just besides Tasman Bay over here. So guys, these are very important entries surrounding the southern island. Now, if I'm talking about northern island, so in northern island you have two very smooth inundations along the coast. So this is referred to as North Taranaki Bight and this is referred to as South Taranaki Bight. Over here, if you go, here you will be finding a very important river called as Wangahui. So Wangahui and Wanganui. The plains surrounding this, they are called as what? They are called as Wanganui Taranaki Plains. This particular area called as Mount Taranaki. So in the ancient times, before the colonization of New Zealand, this was basically the cultural region. This was basically a very rich region for Maori culture. Today, all the Maoris of these areas, they have been persecuted. Today, majority of the Maoris, they settle in this part of New Zealand, not in this part. Today, this region has been extensively cultivated out there, good agriculture, good viticulture. So Maori population over here is declining. These are some of the important water bodies surrounding New Zealand. Now, if we really want to understand the northern island of New Zealand, so northern island is predominantly volcanic. Volcanic in what sense? That it has some of the world's most deadliest volcanoes. So now I'm presenting in front of you the map of volcanoes of New Zealand. Now please remember, if I'm showcasing this map to you, a simple question will arise in your brain. Sir, should we remember all of these volcanoes of New Zealand? The answer is no. You don't need to remember all of the volcanoes, only those volcanoes which I will be enlightening in front of all of you. So if I'm talking about the volcanoes, which volcanoes to remember in New Zealand? Only those volcanoes which are in news. So the first and the most important volcano of New Zealand, it is referred to as Taupo. So you can see over here, it's a water body in the sense that it's a volcanic caldera. Caldera in the sense that before it was a very active volcano, you are having a cylindrical conduit over here. So eventually what happened is this volcano basically went extinct, it became dormant. And eventually the crater of the volcano, it started to be filled with rainwater. So slowly this crater became big and today this exists as a big volcanic caldera. If I'm talking about Lake Taupo, the Taupo volcano is known to have the deadliest eruption known to mankind in the past 5,000 years. That is why this is a very big caldera. It has not erupted like in the past, basically 1000 to 2000 years, but it is estimated that when it erupted, that was the deadliest eruption in the past 5000 years ever to be known by mankind. So Taupo is a very, very important volcanic caldera of New Zealand. So you do need to remember Taupo. Then please remember a volcano called as Rotorua. This is referred to as what? This is referred to as Rotorua. Then in Bay of Plenty, you have two volcanoes. You have White Island and you have Whale Island. Both of these are very important. White Island, it erupted in the year 2019 only. It killed around 30 to 40 people. So these are very important. Rotorua, Taupo, White Island and Whale Island. In the south, you can remember this one. The name itself is very much interesting, Mount Horrible. And then over here, near Dunedin, you have Mount Cargill. So this 5-6 entries you should remember: White Island, Whale Island, Rotorua, Taupo, Mount Horrible and Mount Cargill. This many entries will be enough. Now, if I showcase you through basically the map of Orient Black Swan, so you'll be finding two very important entries over here. So see, this is where we are having Lake Taupo, a town called as Taupo, and this is where we are having Lake Rotorua, so a town called as Rotorua. So both of these are basically what? These are volcanic calderas. Up till 5 years back, this was supposed to be the biggest caldera of the world. But now the biggest caldera of the world has opened up. It has been discovered in near Indonesia, called as Bohemian rice, and in Africa. So Africa, Katanga province, then Bohemian rise near Indonesia, and in Australia, in the downs of Australia, you have also one of the world's biggest caldera. So this no longer holds the crown of the world's biggest caldera, but it is one of the biggest world's caldera. If I showcase you Lake Taupo from above, you will get the hang of it. Let me just open up it. This is Lake Taupo. So the water is basically little bit acidic. The water is not completely basic. The water is little bit acidic in nature. It does have traces of sulfur. See how big this caldera is. Very, very important. And if I'm showcasing you Lake Rotorua, so Lake Rotorua is a place where I have visited. So I'm showcasing you the image of Lake Rotorua captured by me. Let me just open it up. So you can clearly see over there, basically the burnt part, the sulfur rich waters of Lake Rotorua. Let me just open up the image which has been captured by me. Give me 1 minute, guys. Don't know whether I'm having it or not right now. Lake Rotorua. Yes. So this is basically Lake Rotorua. So this image has been captured by me when I visited this part of New Zealand. Yeah, this is our Lake Rotorua. So you can see the muddy waters. The waters are not clear. The waters are a little bit muddy out here. Why the waters are muddy? Yeah. So this is happening because you still have little bit of sulfur traces. You still have little bit of phosphorus traces over here, and the water also smells like that. It does not feel like fresh water. It feels like, yes, the water is little bit acidic. So this is referred to as what? This is referred to as caldera. So what you are seeing right now where I'm standing, so this is basically a big volcanic crater. So rainwater has accumulated, plus some of the gases have also leached. So this will not have any, what I can say, marine life in that, because for marine life to exist, you don't need to have acidic environment. So normally these are not basically the reasons where you can have fishing, where you can have good marine, basically biodiversity. This is basically your Lake Rotorua. Now, after this, let us pivot ourselves to basically the southern island, because southern island is little bit more interesting. And when I'm talking about southern island, so southern island is where you will be witnessing what we did in Australia. So let me just first explain you this part so that all of you can understand and appreciate this. So if I'm taking you to Southern Island, if you see the lat long of the Southern Island, so Southern Island basically sits entirely in the Southern Hemisphere. This is basically the latitude of 45 degrees north out here. So if I'm taking you to Southern Island will be bombarded by what? It will be bombarded by the westerly winds. So westerlies will be basically onshore on the southern coast of the on the western coast of the Southern Island. So over here we basically have Southern Alps, and above we are having Tasman Mountains, and over here we are having Paparoa Range. So these three mountains and ranges together, they will act as what, guys? They will act as orographic barriers. So starting from over here, here and here, you are having basically a single mountain system. If you go into the Southern Island, this is where you are having Mount Arauki. It is also referred to as the Cook Peak, the tallest peak of New Zealand out there, Mount Arauki, or the Cook Peak, Captain James Cook Peak. So if the Southern Alps, they are acting as orographic barriers, so the westerlies will be forced to rise up. As the westerlies rise up, they will condense, they will form clouds. So the orographic side of the Southern Alps will be receiving very heavy rainfall. And as soon as you go into the leeward side, the leeward side will be having what? The leeward side will be having grassland. The leeward side will be having what? The leeward side will be having grasslands. So this is most evident in this very small southern island of New Zealand. If you observe carefully, so these are our Southern Alps. If you can see over here, this green part, right? So this is where you actually have temperate evergreen rainforest. Yes, I'm not bluffing. You basically have what, guys? You basically have temperate evergreen rainforests. So if you go by the name of it, temperate evergreen, so these two words, they don't go in tandem, because how can something be temperate in latitude and evergreen in its characteristic? Because for evergreen you require tropical areas, equatorial areas, good amount of rainfall, but the topography is such that the Southern Alps are able to intercept the westerlies effectively. That is why on the west coast of New Zealand, same stuff we'll do it tomorrow when we're doing South America, and after that when we're doing North America. You find it everywhere. So this is referred to as the wet western margin type of climate. And as soon as you cross the Southern Alps, you are having basically Canterbury Plains out there. We basically have what? We basically are having Canterbury Plains. So Canterbury Plains, they are basically the temperate grasslands of New Zealand. So when I'm talking about the temperate grasslands of New Zealand, they are one of the most extensively cultivated temperate grasslands. Therefore, in a nutshell, if I'm trying to discuss with you all New Zealand, how you can summarize and how you can practice New Zealand. So this is basically our northern island of New Zealand like this. This over here is where we have the southern island of New Zealand. If I'm talking about northern island of New Zealand, so here we basically are having an active subduction zone called as the Kermadec Trench. So if you are having Kermadec Trench, basically here the northern island will be volcanic. So over here we have Taupo and we have Rotorua. This is Taupo and this is where we have Rotorua, two very important volcanic calderas, and above we have two very important volcanoes. So we have the Waitame and the White Island volcano. So we have the White Island and you have Waitaname volcano or the Waitame Island volcano. Then if you are talking about Southern Island, so the boundary basically goes like this. This is where you are having a transform fault, and again you are having subduction zone beginning over here. So this is referred to as alpine fault So to the east of Alpine fault, we basically have what? We basically have Southern Alps. So the Southern Alps, they are acting as orographic barriers, and over here we have basically the temperate grasslands of New Zealand called as Canterbury Plains. So Canterbury Plains, they basically dominate around 30% of the global dairy sector. Why? Because they are basically very much intensively and extensively cultivated both. Yes, dairy farming in basically Canterbury Plains out there. So this is happening because of what? This is happening because if I'm talking about Southern Alps, guys, so Southern Alps, they basically act as orographic barriers to the incoming westerlies. So when I'm talking about these westerlies will condense over here, will be having very heavy precipitation. So on the west side of Southern Alps, we'll be having what? We'll be having temperate evergreen rainforests. We'll be having what? We'll be having temperate evergreen rainforest. So this climate is referred to as what? This climate on the west coast, it is referred to as the wet western margin type of climate. The PYQ was asked in the year 2024. And on the east side, then you'll be finding grasslands. If I'm showcasing you the photo of this again captured by me, so it will shock you to the core. How come is this possible? Like the vegetation of New Zealand, which you will be seeing. See this. So this is actually the west coast of New Zealand, guys. Can you believe that this is the west coast of a temperate country? You can see the dense evergreen trees out here. The Southern Alps acting as orographic barriers. If I showcase you one more photo, and mind you, all of these photos have been captured by me, so you can trust this tour guide out there, right? So this is the Haas coast of New Zealand. You won't believe that yes, this is a temperate region out there. Okay. So this is basically the southern island of New Zealand. Now, if you cross the Southern Alps, so you are having series of glaciated lakes. Glaciated lakes meaning that during the last ice age, this was all covered with ice. The ice melted, and now we are having these lakes being formed, which are still basically filled in by the melt ice water from the Southern Alps out there. You don't have to remember every goddamn lake, you just have to remember 4 to 5 entries. The most important of this, it is referred to as Lake Tekapo. So Lake Tekapo is important because this is also a dark sky park, one of the best natural night sky observatories in the world out there, Lake Tekapo. Then we are having Lake Pukaki, one of the most pristine lakes out there. After that, we are having Lake Hawaii and Lake Wanaka. So two very important glaciated lakes, Lake Tekapo, Lake Pukaki, Lake Wanaka and Lake Hawaii. And then the longest lake of New Zealand, the longest lake of New Zealand, it is referred to as Wakatipu, approximately 84 kilometers in length. And then below we are having Tiana. This is referred to as what? Tiana. And to the north of, just to the west or to the north of Tiana, we are having Milford Sound. So Milford Sound is world famous because it's a submerged glacial valley. It's a fjord. So fjord meaning what? Fjord meaning a submerged glacial valley. Please make sure that you understand this. So glacial valley in the sense that initially there was a big glacier, the glacier completely melted, and now the seawater has intruded in the surrounding areas where the glacier was existing. So if I'm trying to just showcase you how does the Milford Sound look like. So this is how basically the Milford Sound looks like. Open it up. Good image. This is how Milford Sound looks like. You can clearly see the submerged part over here. Let me get a good photo. Yes. This is a good photo. Over here, you will be able to see that yes, this area was once covered by glaciers. Now the glaciers have completely melted and the seawater has come inside. So it is anomaly to the west coast due to southern Alps. Yes, I said you can say, but this is also found in the west coast of South America and this is also found in the west coast of North America. So I said it's not an anomaly out there. It's not an aberration. That is why we refer to it as the western margin wet type of climate, because in North America, if you go, you will finding the world's tallest trees called as the giant sequoia redwood trees out there. So this type of climate is really very important because you won't believe that these forests, they are one of the most important carbon sequestrating agents of the world. These forests, along with the taiga forest of Arctic, the boreal forest of Arctic, they together account for more than 35% of the world's carbon sink. So if global warming happens, if climate change takes place, and if this all completely is wiped out due to wildfires or due to any other climatic aberrations, then the earth will start to warm beyond comprehension. So that is why these regions, guys, are very, 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 very important. So this is referred to as Milford Sound. I'm again reiterating for all of you which lakes you have to remember. You have to remember Lake Tekapo, a very important dark sky park, Lake Pukaki, Lake Hawaii, Lake Wanaka, and then we have the longest lake in New Zealand. The longest lake in New Zealand, it is referred to as Wakatipu, and then we are having Tijuana. So these are some of the important glaciated lakes. Now, if I'm talking about the mineral distribution of New Zealand, that which areas of New Zealand are very important for mineral groups. So you have basically three distinct regions in New Zealand. One region surrounding Auckland, then the Wanghui Taranaki Plains, and then this particular part of New Zealand. So these three regions are very, very important. So this is the map provided by OBS. Now I'm opening up the official map given by the Ministry of New Zealand. So this is basically the official map given by the Ministry of New Zealand with respect to the important minerals that we have in the New Zealand out there. So predominantly you are having basically three very important pockets of minerals. Number first pocket is this one, which is having gold, silver, iron. Then you also have coal out there. Along with that, you also have limestone. You also have basically the regions surrounding clay, and you also have little bit of chromium and copper in this. So this complete region of New Zealand, this region is referred to as Otago Shield. So what we did in Australia, the Western Australian Shield, similarly this region of New Zealand, it is referred to as Otago Shield. So you have an important town over here called as Dunedin. It's not mentioned over here. I will showcase you the town. So the regions surrounding Dunedin are very important for mineral exploration. It has got some of the good mines out there. So you have copper, you have iron, very important regions. After this, the next very important region is basically the region surrounding the Wanghui Taranaki Plains for offshore mineral oils, and then your Tasman Bay too. So your region surrounding the Tasman Mountains, your region surrounding the Karamia Bight, very important for metallic and non-metallic minerals, especially gold and silver. And then this region surrounding Auckland, so Waikato North Head and Waikato coalfields. So this complete region is very, very important for basically mineral exploration. So this is basically the volcanic rocks of the Cretaceous era, the era which ended up with the dinosaurs out there. And then we also have Cambrian and Devonian. So Cambrian and Devonian is found over here, very ancient rocks. So Cambrian Devonian means approximately you can go up till 400 to 450 million years ago. So this region will be dominated by coal fields. So the more the ancient rock system, the better will be coal over there. So this is approximately 450 million years ago. the deposits over here, like if you're talking about this particular area, so this particular area, the Cretaceous times post Gondwana, so this is approximately, you can say, from around 200 to basically 100 million years ago. And then this particular area is also having the same age gap. So you are having oil reserves on the Wanghui Taranaki plains. This particular area is where you are having good rare earth metals, plus you are having very valuable metals like gold, silver and coal. And above if you go, so I guess this is the most richest mineral rich region of the New Zealand. You are finding almost entire range of metallic and non-metallic minerals, along with what? Along with basically rare earth minerals out there. So just three primary pockets: the Auckland field out there, then the Wanghui Taranaki plains along with the Karamia Bight, and then in the south you basically have the Otago Shield province. So three very important mineral regions of New Zealand. And now let us start up with the last part, important cities, right? So cities are not a mass in New Zealand. Rather, we don't have to focus, just two or three cities will be important. The biggest city of New Zealand and arguably the economic capital of New Zealand, you will be having Auckland. So the entire population of New Zealand is close to 50 lakhs. Close to 15 to 20 lakh they reside in Auckland. So I guess the biggest city that we have in New Zealand. After this, we have the city of, let me just zoom in a little bit more that all of you can understand it even further. So then we have the city of Rotorua. So Rotorua today is basically the cultural capital of Maoris. So this is basically the cultural capital of the Maoris, Rotorua, again a very important city. Then we are having Napier. So Napier is a very important port city of New Zealand, exporting lots of minerals out there. And then we have Hamilton. So Hamilton is a city which is a very important manufacturing hub. So packaging industries you don't find in New Zealand, but it's a manufacturing hub. You have important sports center. Plus, just to the east of this is where you are having New Zealand's longest river. It's not shown in this atlas. You don't have to remember. The longest river of New Zealand is Waitomo River. It starts near Lake Taupo. So it flows basically somewhat like this, and it drains near Auckland out there. So placer deposits of gold are also found near Hamilton out there. After this, if I'm taking you to the extreme southern end of the North Island, so this is where you will find the capital city of New Zealand called as the Wellington. After that, if you go down in the southern island, so in the southern island, the most important city, of course, is going to be Christchurch. So it is the second economic capital, plus it is also one of the leading educational hubs in the world because the university is very good over here. And Christchurch is one of the most livable cities in the world out there. After that, if we go in the southern side, so this is where we'll be finding Dunedin. So Dunedin is a very important mineral hub because it is surrounding the Otago Shield region. So again, a very important mineral exporting hub. And then the adventure sports town capital of the world, Queenstown. Bungee jumping, the jet cruise river, and then paragliding. Everything is the best in the world out there in Queenstown. Okay. So I hope, guys, this summarizes New Zealand for each and every one of you. Please, basically, whatever information I have shared, that will be available on my Telegram handle just as it is after the lecture. So you don't have to run helter shelter. Tomorrow we'll be starting off with South America. So the depth in which I'm covering in these lectures, the depth is really very intense. I genuinely hope and I sincerely pray that all of you do appreciate this. So those of you who are watching me live right now, please feel free to comment. So now it might happen that as I'm starting off with South America tomorrow, it will take me around 2 to 3 lectures to complete the content from this depth. Current affairs, important minerals and all this part. Tomorrow we'll be starting off with rivers, plateaus and everything. I will do my best to give you the best possible use case of maps. We'll try to cover as many current affairs as possible. Just be with me till the very end. Okay. So you can all follow me on Telegram. My official handle is CSC with PM. And if you go to studyiq.com, Just opening up the website. So any course, if you go out there, so let's say if you are going to basically the courses of StudyIQ, any course, if you go, if I select English, and then basically if I select any batch out there, so right now we are having SIP batch going on right here. Right now we also have the resolution batch going on, the fast track batch going on. If you click on buy now, and if you use my code PM Live, as soon as you click over here and if you use my code PM Live and if you apply it, you will be getting some very fantastic discounts out there. So please don't forget to use my code PM Live for purchasing any course on the StudyIQ's website. It will be basically fruition for you too also, and it will come fruition to me also. Okay, so together we will achieve everything. I hope that all of you sincerely follow me. Until next time, until tomorrow, tata, bye bye, adios, amigos. Please take good care of yourself. Keep on smiling, keep on working hard, because that is the ultimate crux of life. Okay, thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.